CEO of Jewish Federation, and we are now recording. I'm going to turn it over to my friend Betsy Lynch in just a moment. I just want to welcome everybody. I also want to let everyone on this call know that we're recording this session, as you just heard. And for people who are not able to be here today, we'll be sending that link out. We'll also make it available so you all can share it with others. And as we go here, we have a lot of people participating today. We had a lot of questions already sent in with the registration. We're going to ask that you put questions in the Q&A. You should see a box for Q&A. I'll be able to see those questions. Our team will be able to see those questions, and we will get to as many of them as we can after our Shlomit Ravitsky-Topaz has had a chance to speak. So please enter those whenever you have a question, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend Betsy Lynch.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning for this deeply important conversation, part 2 of a continued exploration into the judicial revisions potentially happening in Israel and the consequences related to the potential reform. We have the pleasure of having Shlomit Ravitsky-Topaz with us today, who is the director of the Joan and Erwin Jacobs Center for Shared Sacred Society and the head of religion and state program at the center. Shlomit is the co-founder and co-directed team, the Jewish Life and Advocacy Center, an organization committed to increasing participation in Jewish life by making Israel's religious establishment respectful of and responsive to the diverse needs of the Jewish community and the Jewish people. We are so glad Shlomit, you are here to be with us just in I think it was about 8 days between the time that we did this the first time and then it's like a whole new world has unfolded. And I am going to turn it over to you so that we have the opportunity to learn more. Thank you so much.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for joining and for being so concerned and interested in what's happening here. And I was asked to give a short update about this week's events. So as you may know, there is a break now in the legislation of the judicial overhaul. And this break will stand until after Passover and after the day of Israel independence. And then afterwards, we're going to see what's going to happen in the next session of the Parliament of the Knesset. Specifically, what's important is the break in the legislation of the way judges are nominated. This law is ready to be legislated, but it's going to be freezed down until after the holidays. What happened this last Sunday is the dismissal of the Ministry of Defense, Yoav Gallant, that was dismissed by Netanyahu after he was warning from the danger to Israel's security and defense abilities due to the reform. Gallant called for a break and for consented decisions in these matters through all the society of Israel. And then Sunday night, after Netanyahu dismissed him, tens of thousands of people spontaneously took to the streets, blocked intersections and protested. And the day after it, Monday, 100,000 of people did the same in very big protests. Netanyahu decided on a pause in the legislation proceedings and is giving now an opportunity to compromise talks at the president's, in order to bring to the next Knesset session after Passover an agreed upon judicial legislation. If there will be no agreement, the current legislation is ready to move on. Is there a trust in Netanyahu's words? It's difficult to say. Some believe him, some don't. Will this stop the protest this Shabbat, for example? We don't know yet. Some of the leaders of the protesters think everything should stop and just wait to see and give a chance to those talks. Some think they can't do this, and since the law is already ready, they should keep on protesting. Netanyahu, in his speech, used the biblical story of the judgment of King Solomon, in which he rules between two women, both claiming motherhood to a baby. King Solomon revealed the true feelings and relationship by suggesting the baby be cut in two, each of the mothers to receive half. The fraud mother agreed. The actual mother begged that the baby will be given to her rival. The analogy is clear. King Solomon is Netanyahu. The baby is the state of Israel. The mothers are the coalition and the opposition. The fraud mother is the protesters who will do anything to achieve their goal to annul the reform. And the actual mother are Netanyahu's supporters who are willing to freeze the legislation to protect Israel and prevent civil war. So this is where we are now, hoping for a chance for those talks to finish in some kind of compromise, maybe proceedings to a whole constitution, maybe only something much smaller. To prevent the worst case scenario, which is if the compromise talks fail, and then the reform passes, and then the High Court strikes down parts of this reform, and then the government may not listen to the court's saying, and then all hell breaks loose. So this is where we stand now, coming to Passover with a new hope. I would move now to the situation, not the last week's situation, but what we're already having for 3 months since the birth of this government. We are dealing and facing 3 crises simultaneously. One of them is the judicial overhaul. The other one is a religion and state crisis. How can we work in a situation in which the ultra-Orthodox parties are a very big part of the government? Religious people, also the Zionist religious parties, are a very, very big part of the parliament, and a lot of the demands in the coalition agreements are about religion and state issues, which part of the people in Israel who are secular or traditional, and some of them are liberal, Orthodox, which are more liberal, have a lot of problem with those demands. And the third one is, of course, the social crisis that is the result of the first ones, and the feeling of a dichotomy, of a binary situation where each one has to say, am I on this camp or on the other one? Which side of the map? If I think in a way, if I have a specific religious beliefs, is this the same thing that necessarily leads to the way I think about political issues and about other sectors of society, the way that we have to choose where we stand. The danger is to both the democratic and the Jewish characteristics of this state. Some people say we're going more to the Jewish side and less to the democratic side. But I do not believe this. I think the danger is to both, because there is a danger to the idea that there is more ways to be Jewish than only one way. And also to the sense of complex identity, the fact that people can be much more complex. They can be, their ideas can go with one sector in a specific issue and with another one on another. We don't have to follow all our beliefs and all our values according to the way we chose in the elections. And the idea is as if democracy and Judaism are opposites. And we know this coming holiday of Passover, this is the holiday of freedom. And maybe the whole idea of this holiday is the understanding that freedom and Judaism can walk together, that the people of Israel went out of Egypt becoming free people, and they got the Torah and became slaves in a way to the rules of the Torah and to God, but in the same sense, free people that have autonomy and an option to choose whether to adopt the rules of the Torah and how to do this. And this now is a question in the land, in the state of Israel. Can we still choose, or are we bound to adopt the beliefs and the values of the majority of the government? The way, what we read in the coalition agreements, which held many, many clauses. So we had big demands that has to do with the Kotel, the way women cannot be active governors and hold the book of Torah and dress the way they want and sing and pray the way they want in the Kotel, and also to the Robinson area of the Kotel, which is more egalitarian. This might be changed. We have demands about the recognition of conversions, especially conversions for Reform and conservative Jews done in Israel, not in the States, but the one done in Israel. Will they still be recognized? We just passed this week the Hametz law was passed about authorities of hospital directors to give orders on the way chametz can or cannot be brought inside hospitals, increased subsidy on ultra-Orthodox institutions and students, more authorities to rabbinical courts, less use of electricity on Shabbat, more gender separation, the law of return reduced the grandchild clause, constitutional study to Torah studies, Talmud learning in the public schools. All those are demands in the coalition agreements. And we should know some of those demands in the eyes of the ultra-Orthodox are only what they will say is only to take care of their society, to give them the option to live here in Israel in a way that gives respect to their values and their Orthodox way of life. Other demands want to change the public sphere and change the way things are done to all the people here in Israel, no matter if they are ultra-Orthodox, Zionist Orthodox, traditional, secular, reform, conservative, and so on. So, and some of them, of course, Arabs will be bound to do the same, because this would be the public sphere and the public rules on Shabbat, on hospitals, on Passover, and so on. And there is a real question, because one question would be from a liberal state of mind. Is this okay with us? With liberal thinking, that there will be gender separation, for example, inside the ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods. We can say in a liberal aspect, this can't be done. And on the other hand, we should respect the way people are thinking and living. We should respect their way of life. Another question is what's going to happen in the public sphere. For example, gender separation on public transportation, or gender separation on hikes in the nature, or natural springs will only be an option to base them one day for women, one day for men, so families cannot go together. So all those issues are the ones that are written in the coalition agreements, and now the government waits until the judicial overall will pass, and then after having the override clause and so on, it's going to be an option to legislate all this because the court cannot interfere. So the feeling of the ultra-Orthodox people is they just want to have an option to live according to their beliefs. And after the court took many of their rights, so they want to take them back through the government. Other people would say, no, you are wronging us. You are working in a way that is unfair and not equal, and is not giving us the freedom of religion and from religion. I'll give one example. The burial issues. Until recently, or it's still the situation now, the financial motivation is used in order to have people agree to be buried, not in a field burial, but in a way that is more economic. More people in one grave, or there are a few different ways to do this. And if you want to have a field grave, you're going to have to pay a lot of money. This is one of the things that will be changed. Now, this is a real problem because we don't have enough room here. If people will be buried back in a field burial, not as was done in the last decade. So this will become the land of the dead instead the land of the living. One more thing before I'm going to wrap this up and we're going to move to questions. There is now 13%, the ultra-Orthodox community is 13%, 22% first graders. Every 16 years, those numbers are doubling. So in 16 years, we're going to have 26% and more than 40% of the first graders. Ultra-Orthodox woman in Israel, in average, has 6.6 kids. So the fear of the people that are not ultra-Orthodox and some of the modern ultra-Orthodox is how will be the situation in 2015, 2060, and so on, when the ultra-Orthodox will be a third or maybe more of this a quarter, maybe third of the population. How will things work? Will their demands be on the public sphere as much as it demands that we weren't used to? Will secular people still feel here as their liberal place? If they don't go to the army, what's going to be the situation of the security? If they don't work in numbers, we have now 53% of the men, the ultra-Orthodox men, working in part of the workforce. And women, it's 78, so it's very close to the numbers of Jewish women who are not ultra-Orthodox, but they're not working full time. They're working much less. Of course, they have a lot of. So what will be the economies in Israel? Will this still be a startup nation in this situation? So those are part of the fears that the protesters are feeling. They're saying, will our country change? Will this be a different place for us to raise our kids than we were brought up in? And on the other side, do the ultra-Orthodox have also the right to live life according to their wishes, but where is it too much in a way of enforcing the rest of the people in religion and state issues, and also on matters that has to do with subsidies and so on. Those subsidies were made in a way that will still motivate the ultra-Orthodox to go to work and go to higher education and be part of the workforce. And now this is changing, and they will be getting more, the students of Yeshivot will get more salary than even soldiers. Another interesting demand is the demand to make the study of Torah, to give it a constitutional status. And as I said earlier, learn Talmud in the public schools. As a person who gives a lot of value to learning the Torah, I would have been very happy for the country to recognize the Torah learning and for public schools to learn not only Bible, but also Talmud. But this cannot be done by force. This can only be done by choice, by love, and not by fear. So there is no use to learning of Torah, which is forced on some of the people, specifically when this basic law, the constitutional law, is saying to learn Torah is the same service to the people of Israel as serving in the army. So some people's children will go to serve in the army, and the others will go to learn in the yeshiva, and this will have a constitutional value. So this is the situation we are in now. There is a break, a hope for constitutional, a hope for a compromise, excuse me. And we have to have belief that people are sitting in the president's home, speaking to each other, people from the coalition and from the opposition. There are a few representatives from each party sitting together and trying to get to a consented, to some kind of agreement and to a consented reform. There will be a reform in the judicial situation in Israel, but the question is what it will be and how many people will still see this as part of their values. We're going to read in a few days in the Haggadah that in every generation we should see ourselves as if we personally got out of Egypt. So this is what everyone wants, to feel free, to feel that we are going on a path to the promised land, either physically or a promised land in a way of our values and our hope.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. You covered a lot in 20 minutes, and it gave me, and I assume everyone else, a tremendous amount to think about. I want to start with sort of a big high level question, sort of an existential question. And this is you and I talked about, I'll try and pronounce this right, this notion of mamlachtiyut, right? This notion of this, am I saying that right? This question of the collective, the good of the kingdom, and how are people in Israel thinking about that now? And I guess that connects to our question of whether there is still a common story. We talk so much about this notion of Jewish peoplehood and Klal Yisrael and this connection that we all have. And what implications does all of this have? How do we in the diaspora think about that notion of Klal Yisrael and Jewish peoplehood, given what you are seeing, and how are Israelis thinking about it?
So it's really a problem now. I can't say differently. Of course, we have shared history and we have shared dreams, but the differences are now so big that people that used to feel that they will give everything for the shared good of the kingdom, for the collectiveness. The word mamlachtiyut, it's like statism. This is a word that is used here in order to say, it's from the word mamlacha, kingdom, but it's saying that I'm going to give up my personal interest in order to serve the interest of the public, of everyone. And this is what we expect from many of the people here in Israel. Your sector is important, but it's more important what's going to happen in this land, because we founded the land of Israel. We're going to have our 75th birthday, Independence Day, the birthday of this land in a few weeks. And this is a dream of generations. And this is something that was built with blood. And our job is to take care of it and to hold it dear for the sake of our children, for the sake of Jewish people abroad, for the sake of all of the future of the Jewish people. This is our job, and we can't be too too loyal to our sector, but we have to be much more loyal to the greater good. Now, this doesn't work anymore if you pull the string too much from both sides. On one point, it's gonna explode. So what's happening now, for many years, it was okay, even though there were debates on this, it was okay for the general public here, the ones who serve in the army, that we're gonna have ultra-Orthodox people that will not serve in the army. We were trying, the state was trying in different ministries to make them motivated to be part of the higher education and part of the workforce. And even one of the IDI's suggestions and recommendation to the government for a few years now is to reduce the age when ultra-Orthodox students can go to work, even though they did not go to the army, to 21. In order then, okay, we understand most of them do not go to the army, at least go in an early age outside and have a few years to learn a profession and then to earn more decently before you have so many kids that you can't take the time to learn anymore. So it was okay with people in different, with limitations that we're going to give. We understand that most of the ultra-Orthodox and the Arab communities in Israel are more poor. So the secular and the religious Zionist and some of the traditional communities in Israel will be the one paying more taxes in order to pay for those kids. So in economy and in defense, a lot of the sectors here said, we are giving up our personal interests in order to have this state function. But when the demands are getting so extreme and in a way, they are getting like in a proudness that is not listening to the other demands, there is a chance that people will say, I don't agree anymore. This is my until here, and I can't take it anymore. And then the secular people, for example, the traditional people of Israel will say, okay, we are a sector as well. So we want our taxes and our children that are going to the army to defend us. The taxes should go to us. There are a lot of ideas now running around. Should Israel become cantonized, like have here different cantons that will be of different sectors, and ideas of some kind of autonomy, of separation between different sectors in order to make things more equal. And this is a very, there's a lot of dangers in this idea to the concept of the shared society, of the shared story, of being one people that came here to Israel after so many years to build a shared society. And if we will go now each our separate way, can we still talk of one land and one story?
It's something that I think a lot of people here are thinking about. I just want to ask one more question about that. I have lots of questions for you. But one of the sort of fundamental pieces that I know diaspora Jews have been thinking a lot about is you made reference to the law of return, and you and I spoke some about that previously, and how that fundamentally changes the relationship between, diaspora and Jews in Israel. And I think a lot of people on this call know something about it, but I think if you could just talk for a minute about some of the reasons why there are challenges with the current law of return and how it is being played out, right? That when it started, 90% of the people coming to Israel were Jewish, and now that number is much lower, that people are coming who really don't have a connection to Judaism, to the land of Israel. And many now who come to Israel don't stay for more than a couple of years, right? They're using it as sort of a way station. However, the fundamental changes being proposed to the law of return really do change the nature of our relationship. Can you just speak for a moment on that?
So the issues with the law of return are real, because we have a lot of people coming here and leaving very shortly afterwards, and a very big percentage of the people coming are not Jewish. By the way, the changes of the law will not necessarily change this, because if only the grandchild clause will be changed, it doesn't necessarily change it. A lot of this is spouses and spouses of kids and kids of the Jews. The idea of the law of return, while it was legislated in the 50s and later on changed in the 70s to include the child and the grandchild. First in the 50s, it was just a Jew, and then it was the son and the grandchild and the spouses of the son of the grandchild and kids of the grandchild. By the way, this change was done in 1970 by Golda Meir, because the North American Jews were talking to Golda Meir about the changes that must happen, because they were fearsome for their children and grandchildren. They did not see the former Soviet Union's people coming. What Golda Meir saw in front of her are the American Jews that said, we want our families to be part of this story. And Golda Meir did two changes. One of them, she brought the clause of the grandchild, the child and the grandchild. On the other hand, she said, who is a Jew? Someone who is a child of a Jewish mother or that went through conversion. Both those clauses were not part of the original law. Now, the idea behind this law is that not only the Jews, but also the family of the Jew is part of the Jewish nation. So maybe they're not halachic Jewish, but they are part of the family, and we want the family here. The problem is many of the people coming they do not feel part of the family. They have no connection to Judaism. They have no connection to Jewish history. They don't know Hebrew. Sometimes they come and then leave a very short time afterwards. So how do we balance those things? And now there are many ideas how to do it in a different way that is done by the coalition agreements. For example, people who have some kind, even if they're not Jewish, and they're only grandchildren or spouses of grandchildren, but they have some kind of connection to a Jewish community. This is their story. So they will be able to come no matter if they're halachically Jewish or not. Or people that are coming from a place that has a threat for Jews will be able to come no matter if they're halachically Jewish. So there are a few paths that can be done in a way that still gives respect to this law and its history and its what stands behind it, and the understanding that it became a symbol a symbol during the years to the connection between Israel and the Jewry around the world, and understanding this is a home for everyone that feels threatened or that feels that this is their home, their place, their family. And this is something we hold dear and we would like to keep on. Ben-Gurion was saying the country doesn't have to give this right to the world Jewry. This is their right, their natural right, even before the country. They only have to come and take it. It doesn't have to be given to them. It's theirs already. So this is what we would like to feel, a feeling of family. Jews and family of Jews can come here, even though they may have do small changes. For example, you will get your passport not immediately, but after a year, you will get your benefits immediately, but the passport later on. So you will have to stay, or you have to be connected in a way to feel that Jewishness is something that's important to you, even by your own saying that you feel part of the Jewish people. This is something that's important to you. You want to be part of a community. All those ideas are different from a halachic distinction.
Right. You know, you can take any one of the things you talked about, the kotel, about chametz, about the law of return, conversion, gender separation, take, LGBTQ rights, you take any one of those and we can have hours of discussion about pulling that thread and what that means for your country and for our relationship with your country. I think in particular around the law of return and conversion, and we obviously have a very diverse community of religious practice with people being converted in Reform synagogues and conservative synagogues and what all of that looks like. I want to get to some of the questions here. So one of the questions is this what we're hearing, right? People are talking to their friends in Israel about a sort of exodus of the educated middle class from Israel. Now, I know people talk about that. Do you see that happening? Do you see the change in the demographics being accelerated because that educated middle class does not feel comfortable in Israel or is so concerned about Israel? What do you anticipate there?
This is very minor. We have a talk about this, threats of this. I think now it's still very minor because this is their language, this is their place, this is where their family is. It's not so easy to immigrant. It's not so easy to change all your environment and all your culture. And people hold this place dear. And they serve this state, they love this state, they are Zionists, they feel this is part of them. So I don't think this is so easy. There is a threat, I think, if this place will change dramatically, if the ultra-Orthodox community will stay unintegrated, but much bigger in numbers. So this place might change. If all the reform overall, the judicial overall will pass, and the relationship between the court and the government will change dramatically, this might change this place. If the economic issues and the defense issues will change dramatically because of less trust of the other banks and countries in the economy of Israel. And this will become not as strong economy country. So this will be a problem also to defense, because without our strong economy, we won't be able to have this strong army. Without most of the young people in Israel serving in the army, we can't have a strong army. So if there are big changes in the population and still all the ultra-Orthodox people do not serve in the army, so this stands a danger to the defense. So all those questions, even now we have our enemies celebrating the fact that we are in this big quarrel between us, and we are much less stronger because we don't feel this collectivism, and as we said, this shared dream and shared story when we come to this Passover, reading our story of so many generations ago, and not necessarily feeling part of it today. So this are the threats of the future, but I do not think this is something that actually is happening today.
Okay. There was a question about the current status of the defense minister, as we read with Gallant. Did he refuse to leave his post? Is he still in the post? What's happening?
No, he wasn't giving the letter of dismissal. So Netanyahu said he's going to be dismissed, but he didn't give it the letter because there are a few hours just after this that he's out of his office, and there must be someone else. And Netanyahu himself cannot be the Minister of Defense, which would be the natural thing to happen, because he's in the middle of a trial in court. So the law doesn't let him to be a minister. He can be a prime minister, but he can't be a minister. So he must nominate someone else before he gives the letter of dismissal to Gallant. So this is the technical reason. Also, maybe we can say that there's a lot of pressure on Netanyahu to bring Gallant back to office.
Right. So there's a question here about the role of the Kohelet. If you can, in all of this, is there a role? What does that look like? If you could explain a little bit about what the Kohelet is and what the role is in what we're talking about in shared society and these proposed changes.
This is a research institution, much younger and much smaller than us in the IDI, but also a think tank that had a lot of influence on some of the people that are now part of the government, and in specifically Rotman, who is the head of the Constitutional and Law Committee in the parliament, and others as well. And many of the Kohelet's recommendations are the ones that were the basis for this judicial overall. I should say that some of the people of Kohelet, especially their head of the economy affairs, was talking pro freezing the reform because of the economical dangers and the things that already happened because of it. But as a whole, this is a think tank that is very much involved in the judicial overall, and was the think base for it.
Okay. So there is a question about there was some talk of creating a different branch of the National Police. Are you familiar with that conversation, or do you know anything about that? I'm not familiar with that.
In order to get for Netanyahu to get the agreement from his from the other parties in the coalition to this freeze of the judicial overhaul and the time until Independence Day, to give time for the parties to sit in the president's home and talk about things and try to find agreement. He needed to promise things to his partners. And the thing that was promised to Ben-Gvir in the coalition agreements and did not actually happened until now is this force, like another police force, that will deal with other things, especially governing the south of Israel and other things. And now he got the promise that he will be able to found this force and they put a commander on it. And we do not yet know who's going to be the commander and what will be the authorities and what's going to be the relationship between the actual police force and this new force. This is something we know very little about.
Great, thank you. We've been talking a lot about the Jewish population, the sort of Zionist liberal democracy, and then the ultra-Orthodox. And what about the non-Jewish population, the Israeli Arabs, who make up a significant percentage of Israel's population? How do some of the changes affect them? And when we think about shared society, what are we talking about for these folks? And what are we talking about in terms of the militia that was promised? What are we talking about in terms of their treatment, in terms of some of these proposed changes that really make this a far more comfortable space for the ultra-Orthodox? What does that mean for the Israeli Arab population and others who are living in Israel?
This is a tough question. I will say this. Of course, as a minority, we would think that it's going to be very important for this minority to defend the High Court as the defender of the rights of the minorities. But many of the Arabs feel this is an inside Jewish quarrel, that we quarrel with each other, and it doesn't really relate to them. And rationally, you would have thought this is very relevant because the situation, the judicial situation will change. The coalition with the government will have much more force. There will be no defender of human rights. But in a way, the feeling of the Arabs to the High Court is complex, because we know the High Court, against what's being said in the right wing, we know the High Court in Israel also defends many of the moves of the army and many of the security moves of the land of Israel, which Arabs are against. So this is a complex situation, and I should say they mostly stay out of it. The dangers are big. The dangers for this community, as well as other minorities, is great. But they are not actively taking sides and being part of this conversation in a very active way.
Okay. So when you and I spoke in preparing for this, you talked about the fact that 5 months ago, if you had said some of the things that we're seeing were going to be things we're seeing, looking at some of the positions Likud is taking, some of the things that are being proposed, can you give us a sense of the sea change in Israeli society that we have seen in the past? It's such an enormous change in the way that it's functioning. You talked about the fact that never before have civil servants been political appointments, right? That there is a change in how some of these appointments below that level of maybe cabinet minister, but you're seeing people being appointed for their loyalty to a particular position as opposed to their experience. We talked about the way that the military has responded to these policy issues. It feels that there is a change that is really fundamental in what we're seeing and how that feels to you. If you could speak a little bit to that. It was a complicated question.
So in Israel, when the government changes, only very few of the civil servants are changing. There are a few jobs which are political and has a sense of loyalty to the new government, but most of the civil servants, this is different than in the US, are unchanged. And also even the ministry of the prime minister, the people doesn't change there, only a few people that are the political advisors and the head of each ministry. Even in this, some of the ministers are keeping in office the heads of their ministers during the years. And of course, the judicial jobs of advisement to the ministries stay on their in office for many years. This is not something that is being changed politically. And one of the demands of this reform, of this judicial overhaul, is to be that there will be an option for the minister to change all his advisors. Many people in the ministries, and specifically the law advisors, the advocates that give him advice. This is and it's also the idea is for their advice not to be mandatory, but to be only a recommendation. This is very different than the way things work in Israel until now, in which the legal advisor is the one telling the minister, can he do what he wants to do? So is this by the law? Does the law say something about this? And try to defend him from going against the law, and to show him the path. Of course, when a minister says something, the legal advisor should find a legal way to make it optional for the minister to do what he wants. But it's also an option to say this can't be done in a legal way. This is something that's being offered to change, that it will not be mandatory, but you can tell your legal advisor, okay, I heard you, but now I'm doing whatever I want. And of course, to change them according to loyalty. So this is one thing. You were talking about the army. The army is functioning still mostly in a normal way. But we heard, and this is what Gallant, the Minister of Defense, was warning about before his dismissal, that there is a danger to bringing the army to be part of the political quarrel and debate. And we saw that a few people in the army from the not the soldiers that are now 18 or 20 or part of the but part of the reserves, that they said, this is not something I can live with. Why should I serve the army that is bound to a government that is doing things so differently? And we saw a few of the pilots that say, they didn't say we won't, they say we will come to every real assignment, but we're not coming to a day of training. And this was a very big thing here, because they didn't come. And now it's not a possibility to tell those pilots, because there were tens of them in the most important pilot units in Israel, the most important planes, and you can't fire them all, because then Israel will not have those powers. So the army and the government had a real problem. They can say nothing, even though they are being. This is all the ground for Netanyahu's decision to freeze.
Right. So the last question I'll have for you, and then we'll wrap up, and we so appreciate your time. I know the demands on your time must be incredible right now, and we have a number of questions about this, is what is the role of the North American Jewish population? We have seen pretty unprecedented responses from JFNA and their sort of very outspoken advocacy and statement around the judicial reform. The Jewish Agency has signed on, the Council of Presidents. We are seeing activism in a way that is unusual. Often there's a feeling in our community, look, don't talk badly about Israeli politics, don't air that out loud. We don't want to criticize because we have to stay in solidarity. Is there a role, and do you see an impact of the sort of North American Jewish community and some of these very significant national agencies, taking a stand against what they see happening and the threat to sort of this notion of Klal Yisrael?
When we were talking about the
and what can we do, Shulamit? Also,
Mm-hmm.
and what can we do? What do you think we should be doing if we have concerns here?
When we were talking about the law of return, I showed a poll, a survey we did, that 50% of the Israelis, of the Jews in Israel, think the jury of the world should be asked and be part of the discussion of the Knesset about the law of return, about changes. So this idea that when we're doing the things that concern our brothers and sisters abroad, they should be part of the discussion. And this is, I think, a debate here in Israel, and I guess in your communities as well. Do you have a voice in what's happening here? When in 49, when there were discussions about constitution, will there be a constitution to Israel or not? Some of the voices said the reason we cannot have a constitution yet is because we didn't hear the voice of the jury of the world. We are only a few people here. Let them come, and afterwards we're going to be able to make some kind of constitution. So some people here think this was right for the first few decades. In the beginning, the jury of the world founded the state of Israel, but there comes some time in which the state of Israel should decide on its own without asking the world jury, and others that think, no, this is their land as well, as I quoted Ben-Gurion earlier, and they are part of the discussion. And a lot of NGOs that are dealing with the world jury and have all kinds of relationships also are, in my WhatsApp groups of all the people that are working on those issues of relationship with North America and other places as well. So there is like this big debate. Is it okay for example, the Ministry of how it's called, of the relationship with the Jews,
diaspora affairs.
Of the diaspora affairs. Thank you. He was saying, like, why should you have a voice? And it's something that's a dilemma among the people working there. And I guess as I've been hearing, among the federations as well. How loud can we speak? I think what's very important, that every time I I hear people from the federation speak, the first thing they say is that we're with you no matter what. After saying that, we have opinions. So I think this is something that, for me, it's very important to hear, that that you are not holding your support to wait and see what's happening here. Great. But I do think that, you're part of the family. Yeah. So you should have a voice and you should speak up. And when you're speaking with love and with brotherhood and sisterhood and with this appreciation of what's happening here and a deep concern of a family, I think your voice should be heard. So there is the relationship with the American state that stands on the shared democratic and liberal values. So this is one story. Do we still have this connection and the shared democracy values? But with the Jewish people in the United States, it's a story of a family. A lot of time you don't like to hear maybe your aunt or the mother of your husband telling you you're doing wrong with your baby or with your house or with your economic, with your money or so on. Right. But this is advice that should be given. And maybe after, you sleep on it. So you say, okay, my mother was right.
Thank you. Well, let me first say we are with you. And I want to reiterate, we are bringing almost 230 people to connect to the land and the people and to wrestle. And if Judaism is about anything, it's about wrestling. And so we want to come and wrestle with you. I want to thank you for your time. This is the second time you and I have had a chance to do this, and I learned so much from you every time we have a chance to talk. I'm so appreciative. I want to also thank the JCC as our partner, and I want to make sure everybody knows that there are a series of lectures, the Goldberg lectures. I see Betsy on screen. We're going to put a link up and we will send all of you a link. The Goldberg lectures this year are focusing on what is happening in Israel right now, the crisis that we are seeing, and they're an incredible opportunity for us here in San Diego to continue to dig into this work. We will continue, both the JCC and Federation, to make opportunities available. Obviously, it's important. Obviously, it's something where there is energy, and we want to find ways for us to participate in this conversation. We will make this recording, as well as the prior webinar that answers a lot of your questions about the Constitution, about the basic laws, about the judicial reform, and other resources to everybody who registered for this. So Betsy, last goodbye. Thank you all. Shlomit, thank you.
Thank you very much, and Chag Sameach.
Chag
Chag
Sameach.
Sameach, everyone. Shlomit, thank you so much.
A sweet Passover to everybody. Thank you.